The smell of death hung in the air like morning fog over the Texas hills, and I could taste it on my tongue as I lay beside Sam's bed, watching his chest rise and fall in shallow, labored breaths. His weathered hand hung limp over the side of the mattress, fingers still stained with coffee grounds from this morning's ritual, a ritual that had become our last. "Well, I reckon this is how it ends, boy," Sam whispered, his voice barely audible above the grandfather clock's relentless ticking in the hallway. Those pale blue eyes that had seen too much war, too much loss, were now clouded with something I'd never seen before: fear. I pressed my muzzle against his palm, feeling the coolness of his skin, the way his pulse fluttered like a wounded bird beneath papery flesh. 6 months ago, when he'd stood up in that dusty auction house outside Austin and said those 3 words that changed everything, "I'll take him." I never imagined it would end like this. Not with him lying here, poisoned, while the man responsible walked free. The coffee cup sat on the nightstand, still half full, still warm, still deadly. I could smell it, that bitter, metallic scent that didn't belong with Maxwell House and cream. The same smell that had been clinging to Captain Wade Thompson's clothes for weeks now. Every time he'd come calling with his friendly visits and his "how you doing" old buddy routine. Sam's breathing hitched, and my ears flattened against my skull. I'd failed him. Failed the one person who'd shown me kindness when the whole world had written me off as damaged goods. A reject not worth the price of a bullet. The one person who'd looked at my scars and seen something worth saving. The photograph on the nightstand had been turned face down again, the one of Lieutenant Michael Harrison in his Marine dress blues. Sam's boy who'd never made it home from Afghanistan. The boy whose letters were hidden in that old cigar box beneath the floorboards, letters that told a story Sam didn't know I'd found, letters that explained everything about why I was here, why Sam had saved me, and why we were both going to die tonight. I could hear gravel crunching in the driveway, footsteps on the porch, the soft scrape of a key in the lock, a key that shouldn't exist, that Sam had never given to anyone except family, except the man he'd trusted with his life in Vietnam 47 years ago, before everything went wrong. My hackles rose as the front door creaked open. Thompson's voice drifted down the hallway, honey sweet and poisonous as oleander. "Sam, you awake? Old friend, brought you some of that apple pie Martha used to make?" Sam's eyes found mine in the lamplight, and I saw the truth reflected there, the same truth that had been eating at him for months. The reason he'd stopped sleeping, stopped eating, stopped trusting anyone but me and Dr. Maggie. He knew. He'd always known. "He's coming for us both." "Thunder," Sam breathed, using the name he'd given me that first night when I'd hidden beneath his porch during a thunderstorm, shaking like a leaf. "You were there, boy. You saw what really happened to Michael. You're the only witness left." The footsteps were getting closer, measured and deliberate, like a funeral march. Thompson's shadow appeared in the doorway, backlit by the hallway light, and I could see the syringe glinting in his hand. "Time to put old dogs to sleep," he said, and his smile was colder than a January morning. I positioned myself between Sam's bed and the door, every muscle coiled tight, every instinct screaming. This was it, The moment I'd been trained for, lived for, the moment when everything I'd learned about loyalty and sacrifice would matter. But I knew the truth that was tearing my heart apart. The secret that made this moment unbearable. I wasn't just protecting Sam Harrison. I was protecting the father of the boy who died saving my life. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. 6 months ago, I was nothing more than lot number 47 in the Travis County livestock auction, lying on cold concrete while strangers poked and prodded at my ribs like I was a piece of broken machinery. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows that made my scars look even uglier than they were, and Lord knows, I had plenty of those. "That dog ain't worth a hill of beans," someone muttered from the crowd, and the laughter that followed cut deeper than any whip ever had. "Look at him half dead already. Probably got rabies or worse." I kept my eyes fixed on the floor, watching dust motes dance in the light. 3 years since they'd pulled me out of that hellhole in Colorado. 3 years of being passed from facility to facility like a hot potato nobody wanted to hold. Aggressive, they'd marked on my file. Unsuitable for rehabilitation. Translation damaged goods, 1 step away from the needle. The auctioneer's voice cracked as he tried to drum up interest. "Starting bid $50 for this German Shepherd. Folks, he's got good bloodlines. Military training." "Military training my ass," someone called out. "That's why he's here, ain't it? Couldn't cut it in the service." If only they knew. If only they could see past the matted fur and the fear in my eyes to the 3 tours I'd served, the lives I'd saved, the hell I'd walked through in the mountains of Afghanistan. But that thunder was gone, buried beneath layers of trauma and betrayal so thick I could barely remember who I used to be. That's when I heard a chair scraping against concrete in the back row. I looked up despite myself and saw him. An old man in a faded Marine Corps jacket, silver hair combed neat, hands that looked like they'd seen their share of hard work. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold, blue as a Texas sky, and filled with a kind of understanding I hadn't seen in years. He stood up slowly, like his joints were giving him trouble, and when he spoke, his voice cut through the mockery like a knife through butter. "I'll take him." The room went dead silent. Even the auctioneer seemed surprised. "Sir, I should mention this animal has behavioral issues," the man in the white coat started to say. "Son," the old man interrupted, his voice carrying the kind of authority that comes from years of commanding respect. "I've been dealing with behavioral issues since before you were born. How much? $200 plus fees, done." He was already walking toward the front, pulling out a worn leather wallet. "Name's Sam Harrison. I'll take care of the paperwork." 20 minutes later, I found myself in the passenger seat of a dusty Ford pickup, staring out at the Texas countryside rolling by. Sam hadn't tried to pet me, hadn't made those ridiculous cooing sounds people always made around dogs. He'd just opened the truck door and said, "Your choice, boy. You can come with me, or you can stay here and take your chances with whatever comes next." I'd chosen the truck. "You remind me of someone," he'd said as we pulled out of the parking lot, and there was something in his voice, pain, maybe, or regret. Someone who deserved better than he got. The ranch house sat at the end of a long gravel drive, shaded by ancient oak trees that had probably been there since before Texas was even a state. It was nothing fancy, white clapboard siding, green shutters, A wraparound porch with rocking chairs that looked like they'd seen plenty of use. But something about it felt safe, like a place where broken things could heal. Sam climbed out of the truck and walked around to my side, but he didn't reach for my collar or try to force me out. Instead, he opened the door and stepped back, giving me space. "Take your time," he said. "This is home now, if you want it to be." I sat there for a long moment, studying this man who'd just spent his hard-earned money on a dog everyone else had written off. His clothes were clean but old, his boots worn smooth at the heels. There was a sadness around his eyes, the kind that comes from losing something precious and never quite getting over it. Finally, I jumped down from the truck. Not because I trusted him. Trust was a luxury I couldn't afford, but because staying in that truck wasn't really living. And I was tired of just surviving. He led me to the back porch without saying much, filled a water bowl from the garden hose, and disappeared into the house. Through the screen door, I could hear him moving around inside, the sound of pans clattering, the microwave beeping. 20 minutes later, he came back out with a plate of sliced roast beef. "Figure you're probably tired of that kibble they've been feeding you," he said, setting the plate down near the water bowl. "Real food for a real soldier." That word soldier hit me like a physical blow. When was the last time anyone had called me that? When was the last time anyone had looked at me and seen something other than a problem to be solved or a burden to be disposed of? I approached the food cautiously, half expecting some kind of trick. But Sam had already settled into one of the rocking chairs, paying me no mind, just watching the sun set behind the oak trees. "You don't have to go in the house if you don't want to," he said without looking at me. "Door'll be open, though. Always is." I ate the beef, the first real meat I'd tasted in months, and curled up under the porch steps as darkness fell, for the first time in 3 years. I didn't flinch every time I heard a car engine or a door slam, for the first time since Afghanistan, since everything went wrong. I closed my eyes and let myself rest. Just before I drifted off, I heard Sam's voice drifting down from the porch. He was talking to someone, though I couldn't see who. "Found him today, son," he was saying, his voice thick with emotion. "Looks just like you said he would in your letters. Beat up, scared, but still fighting. Still surviving." There was a long pause. Then, "I know you'd want me to take care of him. I know you'd want him to have a home." I opened one eye and saw him there in the rocking chair, holding what looked like a photograph in his weathered hands. Even in the dim porch light, I could see the tears on his cheeks. That's when I knew this wasn't random kindness. This wasn't some old man taking pity on a broken-down dog. This was something deeper, something connected to whoever was in that photograph, whoever Sam had been talking to in the darkness, someone who wasn't there to answer back. The grandfather clock in the hallway keeps ticking, each second stretching like an eternity while I watch Sam's chest barely rise and fall. His breathing is getting shallower, more labored, and I can smell the poison working its way through his system, bitter and wrong, like antifreeze mixed with medicine. Thompson's handiwork, carefully planned and perfectly executed. I should call for help. The emergency button is right there on the nightstand, the one Dr. Maggie insisted Sam install after his last heart episode 6 months ago. One push and the paramedics would be here in 20 minutes. But Sam's words from last week keep echoing in my head. Don't trust nobody but Maggie. Thunder. Nobody else. Promise me. He'd been sitting right here on the edge of the bed when he said it, his hand shaking as he cleaned my dinner bowl. At the time, I thought it was just the paranoia, talking the way old soldiers sometimes get when the world feels too big and too dangerous. Now I understand. Sam knew this was coming. He'd been preparing me. But how do you prepare a dog to watch the only person who ever truly loved him slip away into darkness? My paws are restless against the hardwood floor, claws clicking out a nervous rhythm. Every instinct I have is screaming at me to do something, anything. But what run to Dr. Maggie's house 3 miles down the road? By the time I got back, Sam would be gone. Stay here and guard him against what poison that's already in his bloodstream, doing its deadly work. The worst part is, I saw it happening. I smelled Thompson's deception weeks ago but couldn't make Sam understand. Dogs don't have words for the coffee tastes different, or your old friend keeps asking too many questions about your health. All I could do was growl when Thompson came around, position myself between him and Sam, try to communicate danger in the only way I knew how. Sam just thought I was being protective. "Easy, boy," he'd say, scratching behind my ears. "Wade's family. Known him since we were 19 years old. Crawling through rice paddies in Vietnam. He wouldn't hurt a fly." That's the thing about trust. It can be a man's greatest strength and his greatest weakness. Sometimes both at the same time. 3 weeks ago, I started noticing the pattern. Thompson would show up every Tuesday and Friday, always around 4 o'clock, always carrying that same thermos of coffee and a paper bag from the bakery downtown. "Thought you might like some company, Sam," he'd say, settling into the kitchen chair like he belonged there. Martha's old recipe for apple turnovers. At first, Sam seemed genuinely happy for the visits. They'd sit at the kitchen table for hours, 2 old warriors sharing stories about the war, about the good times before everything went sideways. Thompson had a way of making Sam laugh, of bringing light back to those blue eyes that had been dimmed by grief and loneliness. But I noticed things Sam didn't. The way Thompson's hand would hover over Sam's coffee cup when Sam went to the bathroom. The tiny vial he kept in his jacket pocket. The one that smelled like bitter almonds and death. The way he'd watch Sam drink, counting the sips, calculating the dosage. I tried to warn him. God knows I tried. I'd knock the coffee cup over with my nose. Accidentally. Bump into Thompson's arm. Create distractions. But Thompson was clever. He'd just pour a fresh cup. Laugh about clumsy dogs. Pat my head like we were old friends. Thunder's been acting strange lately. Sam mentioned to Dr. Maggie during her last visit. Skittish around Wade, knocking things over. Maybe he's getting senile. If only I could have told him the truth. If only I could have explained that the bitter smell clinging to Thompson's clothes wasn't just old coffee and cigarettes. If only I could have made him understand that his best friend since Vietnam was slowly, methodically killing him. Now, listening to Sam's labored breathing, I'm drowning in guilt and rage. This is what it must feel like to be human, to know something terrible is happening and feel powerless to stop it. To carry the weight of failure like a stone in your chest. The floorboards creak overhead. Thompson is moving around upstairs, probably searching through Sam's papers, looking for something. Maybe the letters, maybe the photographs, maybe the evidence that could destroy him if it ever came to light. Sam's hand twitches against the blanket, and his eyes flutter open. For a moment, He seems confused, disoriented, like he's forgotten where he is. Then his gaze finds mine, and I see recognition there, along with something that breaks my heart, resignation. "Hey there, boy," he whispers, his voice like sandpaper on wood. "Still keeping watch?" I whine softly, pressing my muzzle against his palm. His skin is cold now, clammy with sweat. The poison is winning. "I need to tell you something," he says, struggling to sit up. "About why I really brought you home. About Michael." His breathing hitches, and he has to pause, gathering strength. "Thompson doesn't know that I know. Doesn't know that I figured it out." My ears perk forward. Michael, the name that's been haunting this house like a ghost. The boy in the photograph. The reason Sam talks to empty air sometimes when he thinks I'm sleeping. "My boy wrote me letters," Sam continues, his voice getting weaker. "Told me about his dog, about how that dog saved his life more times than he could count. Told me what really happened over there, what Thompson did." Tears are streaming down his cheeks now. "I found you because of those letters. Thunder. I knew who you were the moment I saw you." The room seems to spin around me. Michael. Letters. Thompson. The pieces are starting to fall into place, but the picture they're forming is too terrible to comprehend. "You were his dog," Sam whispers. "My son's partner, his best friend. And Thompson." He stops, overcome by a coughing fit that sounds like it's tearing him apart from the inside. Footsteps on the stairs. Thompson is coming back down. And there's something different about his step now, purposeful, final, like a man who's finished what he came to do. Sam grabs my collar with surprising strength, pulling me closer. "The box under the floorboard," he gasps. "Behind the refrigerator. Michael's letters. They explain everything. About the program. About what Thompson was doing to the dogs. About why." The bedroom door opens, and Thompson's silhouette fills the doorway. But something's wrong with the picture. This isn't the kindly old family friend who's been bringing coffee and turnovers. This is someone else entirely, someone cold and calculating, with eyes like chips of ice. "Well, well," Thompson says, stepping into the room. "Still alive. Are we? That's unfortunate. The dose should have worked by now." He's not bothering to pretend anymore. The mask has come off, and what's underneath is monstrous. Sam's grip on my collar tightens. "Thunder," he whispers, so quietly that only I can hear. "Run." But I'm not running. Not this time. Not when the only family I have left is lying here helpless, betrayed by the one person he trusted most in the world. Thompson reaches into his jacket and pulls out a syringe filled with clear liquid. "Sorry about this, old friend," he says, but there's no sorry in his voice, only cold efficiency. Nothing personal, just tying up loose ends. He takes a step toward the bed, and that's when I make my choice. The same choice I made in Afghanistan when the mortars started falling. The same choice every soldier makes when it matters most. I place myself between the threat and the person I'm sworn to protect, and I prepare to fight. 4 months ago, on a lazy Sunday afternoon, when the Texas heat was making everything shimmer like a mirage. I made the discovery that changed everything. Sam had gone into town for groceries, leaving me alone on the ranch for the first time since I'd arrived. The trust implicit in that gesture wasn't lost on me. Most people wouldn't leave a damaged military dog unsupervised around their property. I'd been exploring the old garage behind the house, following the scent trail of mice and motor oil, when my paw caught on a loose floorboard near the back wall. Curious, I started digging an old habit from my bomb detection days that I'd never quite shaken. The wood gave way easily, revealing a space underneath that had been carefully hollowed out. Inside was a military-issue ammunition box, the kind we used to store sensitive equipment overseas. It was locked, but the metal had rusted through in one corner, and I managed to work it open with my teeth and claws. The smell that hit me when the lid came off was like being punched in the gut. Gun oil, desert sand, and something else. Something achingly familiar. Letters, dozens of them. All in the same handwriting. All addressed to Dad in careful block letters. The return address made my heart stop. Lieutenant Michael Harrison, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, FOB Chapman, Afghanistan. I'd seen that name before, heard Sam whisper it in his sleep, seen it engraved on the headstone in the photograph on Sam's dresser. But seeing it here, in this hidden cache, connected to letters that smelled like home and heartbreak, made everything click into place with terrifying clarity. With shaking paws, I carefully pulled out the top letter. The paper was yellowed with age, and the ink had faded in places, but the words were still legible. "Dad," it began. "I hope this letter finds you well. I wanted to tell you about my new partner. His name is Thunder, and he's the best German Shepherd the Corps has ever trained." Thunder. My name, my real name. Before they'd stripped it away and reduced me to a number in their files, I read on, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. "Thunder saved my life again today. IED on the patrol route that he detected 50 meters out. The whole squad would have been gone if not for him. I know you're worried about me over here, but having Thunder by my side makes me feel like I've got a guardian angel watching over me." The letter was dated 3 years ago, just a few months before everything went to hell, before the mission that changed everything, before Michael died and I lost my mind. There were dozens more letters, each one painting a picture of our time together in Afghanistan. Michael wrote about my training, my instincts, the way I could sense danger before any human could detect it. He wrote about the night attacks when I'd wake him seconds before the mortars started falling. He wrote about the day I'd found the hidden weapons cache that saved an entire village from massacre. But it was the final letters that made my blood run cold. "Dad," Michael had written in his last correspondence, dated just 2 weeks before his death. "Something's wrong with the K-9 program here. Captain Thompson has been asking a lot of questions about Thunder, about his training records, about whether he's showing any signs of instability. Some of the other dogs have been disappearing dogs that were perfectly healthy and well-trained. When I ask what happened to them, I get told they were reassigned or retired early due to behavioral issues. But I don't buy it. Captain Thompson. The same Thompson who'd been coming around the ranch, bringing coffee and poison in equal measure. The same Thompson who'd served with Sam in Vietnam, who Sam trusted like a brother. My paws trembled as I continued reading. Thompson's been pushing some kind of experimental training protocol. Says it's designed to make the dogs more compliant, more controllable, but the dogs that go through his program come back different, broken, like they've had their spirits crushed. I've refused to let Thunder participate, and now Thompson's getting pressure from above to make it mandatory. The next letter was even more disturbing. Dad, I think Thompson is planning something. He's been talking about problem dogs and necessary sacrifices for the greater good. Yesterday, I caught him going through Thunder's medical files, making notes about his psychological profile. When I confronted him, he said he was just doing routine evaluations, but something in his eyes. Dad, I'm scared. Not for me, but for Thunder. I think Thompson sees him as a threat somehow. The final letter was barely 2 pages long, and it was written in a hurried, almost frantic hand. Dad, if something happens to me, I need you to find Thunder. Thompson's program isn't about training, it's about elimination. He's been systematically getting rid of any dog that might expose what he's been doing. The behavioral problems are fabricated. The early retirements are executions. Thunder knows too much, has seen too much. He's a witness to things that could destroy Thompson's career and put him in prison for the rest of his life. The letter went on to describe specific incidents, dogs that had disappeared after showing signs of stress, handlers who'd been reassigned when they asked too many questions, medical records that had been falsified to justify euthanization. Michael had been building a case, collecting evidence, preparing to blow the whistle on the entire operation. I've hidden copies of everything in a safe place, the letter concluded. If something happens to me, look for Thunder. He'll be the key to proving everything. Thompson will try to have him destroyed, but you can't let that happen. Promise me, Dad. Promise me you'll find him and keep him safe. He's not just my partner, he's my brother. And he's the only one left who can tell the truth about what really happened over here. I sat there in that dusty garage, surrounded by the evidence of my own past, trying to process what I'd learned. Sam hadn't found me by accident. He hadn't rescued me out of simple kindness or loneliness. He'd been searching for me, following the trail of his dead son's letters, tracking me through the military bureaucracy and the cover-up that had nearly cost me my life. The sound of Sam's truck in the driveway brought me back to the present. Quickly, I gathered the letters and placed them back in the box, pushing it back into its hiding place and covering the loose floorboard with dirt and debris. But I couldn't cover up what I'd learned, couldn't unknow the truth that was now burning in my chest like a brand. When Sam came into the garage looking for me, I saw him with new eyes. The way he moved carefully around me, never pushing, never demanding. The way he'd speak to the photograph on his dresser when he thought I wasn't listening. The way he'd sometimes look at me with such profound sadness that it took my breath away. There you are, boy, he said, setting down his grocery bags. Been exploring, have you? His voice was casual, but his eyes were studying me intently, as if he could read the knowledge written on my face. I walked over to him and pressed my head against his leg, the way I used to do with Michael when words weren't enough to express what I was feeling. Sam's hand came down to rest on my head, and I felt him trembling. You know, don't you? He whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. Somehow, you figured it out. I looked up at him. This broken old man who'd lost his son and spent months tracking down his son's dog, and I saw the truth reflected in his eyes. He'd known who I was from the moment he saw me in that auction house. Every kindness, every gentle word, every patient gesture had been his way of honoring Michael's memory. That night, as we sat on the porch watching the stars come out, Sam finally spoke the words that had been hanging between us like a bridge waiting to be crossed. "My boy loved you more than life itself," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And if he couldn't come home to me, at least I could bring a piece of him home." I laid my head on his lap and felt his tears fall onto my fur. And for the first time since Afghanistan, I understood what it meant to be home. Present. My paw slams down on the emergency button beside Sam's bed, the red light flashing like a beacon in the darkness. The automated voice crackles to life. "Emergency services have been contacted. Help is on the way." But even as I hear the words, I know Thompson won't let any real help reach us. He's had this planned too carefully, too long. 3 months ago, Thompson started his Tuesday visits like clockwork, always arriving at 4:15 with that same cheerful knock on the screen door. "Afternoon, Sam," he'd call out, his voice carrying that false heartiness that made my hackles rise every single time. "Brought you some of that good coffee from downtown." Present. I can hear a vehicle coming up the gravel drive, but the engine sound is all wrong, too quiet, too smooth, not the rumbling diesel of the county ambulance, but something sleeker, something that doesn't belong. 3 months ago. "You know, Thunder doesn't seem to like me much," Thompson had mentioned during one of those early visits, watching me pace restlessly by the kitchen door. He was stirring sugar into his coffee, the spoon clinking against ceramic in a rhythm that seemed almost hypnotic. "Dogs usually take to me just fine." Sam had laughed, scratching behind my ears. "Don't take it personal. Wade, he's been through hell. Takes him time to warm up to folks." If only Sam had listened to what my behavior was really telling him, that some instincts run deeper than training, that some dangers can't be taught, only felt. Present. The vehicle doors slam shut outside, but I count 3 separate sounds. Thompson didn't come alone this time. My muscles coil tight as I position myself between Sam's bed and the bedroom doorway. Every tactical lesson Michael ever taught me comes flooding back. Assess the threat. Protect the asset. Never give ground. Give. 3 months ago, I'd started following Thompson after those visits, tracking him to the edge of the property. One Tuesday evening, I watched him stop his car a quarter-mile down the road and pull out a cell phone. Even from that distance, I could hear fragments of his conversation carried on the evening breeze. "Taking longer than expected," and "Old bastard's got a stronger constitution than we thought." And finally, chillingly, "Might need to adjust the dosage." Present. Sam's breathing has become so shallow, I have to press my ear to his chest to hear it. "Thunder," he whispers, his voice like dry leaves rustling. "In the kitchen." Behind the refrigerator, loose floorboard. Each word is a monumental effort, and I can see him slipping away even as he tries to tell me something crucial. 3 months ago, the night I'd overheard Thompson's phone call, I'd tried desperately to communicate what I'd learned to Sam. I'd scratched at the kitchen floor where Thompson always set his coffee thermos. I'd knocked over Thompson's cup during his next visit, accidentally spilling the contents across the linoleum. I'd even dragged one of Michael's letters from the garage and left it on Sam's pillow, hoping he'd make the connection. But Sam had just cleaned up the messes and put the letter back where it belonged, attributing my behavior to anxiety and restlessness. Maybe I should ask Dr. Maggie to prescribe something for Thunder's nerves, he'd told Thompson. He's been acting mighty peculiar lately. Thompson's eyes had lit up at that suggestion. You know, Sam, I've got some experience with dog behavior from my military days. Maybe I could help work with him, get him calmed down. The predatory smile that had crossed his face made my blood run cold. Present footsteps on the front porch now, slow and deliberate. I can smell Thompson's aftershave mixed with something medicinal and sharp. Behind that, two other scent strangers, but with the same underlying smell of deception and violence that clings to Thompson like cologne. 3 months ago, the arguments had started in September, when Sam began asking questions Thompson didn't want to answer. "Wade, you never did tell me exactly what happened to Michael's unit that day," Sam had said during one of those Tuesday visits, stirring his coffee with more force than necessary. Official report was pretty thin on details. Thompson had shifted uncomfortably in his chair, and I'd noticed how his hand moved instinctively to his jacket pocket, the pocket where he kept that small vial. "Sam, you know those operational reports are classified, even after all these years. There are things I can't discuss." "Michael was my son," Sam had replied, his voice carrying an edge I'd never heard before. "I think I've got a right to know how he died." The tension in the room had been thick enough to cut with a knife, and I'd watched Thompson's jaw clench as he chose his words carefully. "Your boy died a hero, Sam. That's all that matters. Sometimes it's better to let sleeping dogs lie." Present. The front door creaks open. Thompson must have had a key made. Of course he would have. He's been planning this for months, maybe years. I hear his voice drifting down the hallway, but it's different now. Gone is the friendly facade, replaced by something cold and businesslike. "Check the kitchen first," he's telling someone. "Look for any papers, letters, anything that might be problematic. Then we'll finish up here and stage the scene." Stage the scene. The words hit me like a physical blow. Thompson isn't just here to watch Sam die. He's here to make sure it looks like natural causes. A lonely old man's heart giving out in his sleep. Nothing suspicious, nothing to investigate. 3 months ago, the final confrontation had happened on a Thursday evening in October. Thompson had shown up unannounced, agitated and angry, dropping all pretense of friendly visits. I'd been dozing on the porch when I heard raised voices from inside the house. "You've been asking too many questions, Sam," Thompson was saying, his voice sharp with barely controlled fury. "Talking to people you shouldn't be talking to, stirring up old business that's better left buried." "I hired a private investigator," Sam had replied, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "Fellow named Rodriguez, specializes in military cases. Seems there were a lot of irregularities in that K-9 program you were running. Wade. A lot of dogs that went missing. A lot of records that got lost or destroyed." The silence that followed was deafening. When Thompson finally spoke again, his words were like ice. "Some secrets are worth killing for, Sam, and some old friends need to learn when to keep their mouths shut." Present. They're in the kitchen now. I can hear drawers being pulled out, cabinets opening and closing, the scrape of furniture being moved. They're looking for Michael's letters, for any evidence that could tie Thompson to the cover-up. But they don't know about the hiding place behind the refrigerator, the loose floorboard that holds the real treasure trove of evidence. Sam's hand finds mine in the darkness, his fingers cold as winter. "Promise me," he whispers, his voice barely audible. "Promise me you'll make them pay for what they did to Michael, for what they did to all those dogs." I press my muzzle against his palm, and in that touch, I make a vow that goes deeper than words. Thompson thinks he's won, thinks he's covered all his tracks and eliminated all the witnesses, but he's made one crucial mistake. He's underestimated a soldier's oath to protect and serve, even unto death. The footsteps are coming down the hallway now, and I can see shadows moving outside the bedroom door. Thompson's voice carries clearly in the night air. "Time to put this old dog out of his misery." But as I brace myself for what's coming, I realize something that fills me with grim satisfaction. The emergency signal went out 20 minutes ago, and Dr. Maggie's house is only 15 minutes away when she's driving fast. Thompson may have planned for everything, but he didn't plan for a dog who learned long ago that sometimes the best defense is a good offense. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. Thompson steps into the bedroom doorway, and in the dim lamplight, I see him clearly for the first time without his mask of false friendship. This isn't the kindly old veteran who's been bringing coffee and comfort to a grieving father. This is a predator who's been circling his prey for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He's dressed like a paramedic, crisp white shirt, navy pants, even a badge clipped to his chest pocket. But his eyes are dead cold, and the medical bag in his hand isn't meant for healing. Behind him, 2 other men in similar uniforms fill the hallway, their faces hard and professional. They've done this before. Well, Thompson says, his voice carrying that same tone I remember from Afghanistan, the voice of a man who enjoys having power over life and death. "Looks like the old boy's still hanging on. That's unfortunate, but not unexpected. Some folks just take longer to let go." Sam's hand tightens on my collar, and I can feel his body trembling with rage despite his weakness. "Wade," he manages to rasp out, "you son of a bitch. I trusted you." Thompson chuckles, setting his bag down on the dresser and pulling out a syringe filled with clear liquid. "Trust's a funny thing. Sam, you trusted me in Vietnam when I called in those coordinates that saved your life in '69. You trusted me when I stood beside you at your wedding, when I held your boy when he was just a baby. 47 years of trust. And you threw it all away for what? A few questions about ancient history." "Michael was your godson," Sam whispers, and there's heartbreak in his voice that cuts deeper than any physical wound. "You were supposed to protect him." "I did protect him," Thompson snaps, his facade finally cracking completely. "I protected him from the truth about what really happened over there. I protected him from knowing that his precious thunder here was a loose cannon who couldn't follow orders, who put entire operations at risk with his unpredictable behavior." The lies roll off his tongue so smoothly. I almost admire the craftsmanship. Almost. But I was there. I know what really happened in those mountains. What Thompson's enhanced training protocols really meant, what happened to the dogs who refused to break under his methods. Michael found out, didn't he? Sam's voice is getting stronger now, fueled by righteous anger. He figured out what you were doing to those animals, and you had him killed for it." Thompson's laugh is like broken glass. "Had him killed, Sam. You give me too much credit. I didn't have to arrange anything special for your boy. All I had to do was make sure he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, with the wrong intelligence. Amazing how a small error in coordinates can change the course of history." The admission hangs in the air like poison gas. Thompson just confessed to murdering his own godson, and he's enjoying every second of Sam's anguish. "You see," Thompson continues, pulling the cap off the syringe, "Michael was getting too close to the truth about the K9 program. He'd figured out that we weren't just training dogs, we were testing experimental behavioral modification techniques, government contracts, Sam, big money, the kind of money that makes a man's retirement very comfortable indeed." One of the men behind him shifts impatiently. "Boss, we need to wrap this up. Someone's bound to have heard that emergency signal." Thompson waves him off. "Relax, Marcus. I disabled the relay tower 20 minutes ago. That emergency call went nowhere. As far as the world knows, Sam Harrison died peacefully in his sleep of natural causes. Just another old soldier whose heart finally gave out." But even as he says it, I can hear something that makes my heart leap, the distant sound of an engine, growing closer. Not the smooth purr of Thompson's fake ambulance, but the familiar rumble of Dr. Maggie's old Ford pickup, the one that backfires every time she shifts into third gear. Thompson doesn't hear it yet, focused as he is on savoring his moment of triumph. He approaches the bed slowly, like a cat playing with a wounded mouse. "You know what the beautiful part is? Sam, after you're gone, I'll make sure Thunder here gets the end he deserves. Another tragic case of a dangerous military dog finally snapping, having to be put down for public safety, clean, neat, no loose ends." That's when I realized the full scope of his plan. Thompson isn't just here to kill Sam, he's here to eliminate every piece of evidence that could connect him to Michael's death and the K9 program cover-up. The letters, the documents, and most importantly me, the living witness to his crimes. "I killed your boy because he wouldn't let sleeping dogs lie," Thompson says, leaning over Sam with the syringe. "And now I'm going to kill you for the same reason. Some secrets are worth any price." Sam looks at me, and in his eyes I see not fear, but fierce determination. "Thunder," he says clearly, loudly enough for everyone in the room to hear. "Attack." It's not a request, it's an order, given in the voice of a Marine sergeant who once led men into battle, given with the authority of a handler who trusts his partner completely, and for the first time in 3 years, I remember exactly who I used to be. I don't hesitate. I don't think. I simply act on instincts that have been buried under layers of trauma and abuse, but never destroyed. In one fluid motion, I leap from beside the bed, my jaws aiming not for Thompson's throat that would be too quick, too clean, but for his hand, the one holding the syringe. My teeth close around his wrist with bone-crushing force, and I hear him scream as the syringe goes flying across the room, shattering against the far wall. The clear liquid spreads across the hardwood floor like spilled tears. "Get it off me!" Thompson shrieks, trying to shake me loose. But I hold on with the determination of a dog who's finally found his purpose again. Shoot it, kill it. The 2 men behind him go for their weapons, but they're too slow. too surprised by the sudden violence. They expected to find a sick old man and a broken-down dog, not a fight. That's when the front door explodes inward with a crash that shakes the whole house. And Maggie's voice rings out like the voice of an avenging angel. Travis County Sheriff's Department, everyone on the ground, now. But it's not just Maggie. Through the chaos, I can hear multiple voices, boots on hardwood, the distinctive rattle of tactical gear. Somehow, impossibly, the cavalry has arrived. Thompson's eyes go wide with panic as he realizes his carefully laid plan is falling apart. "This is impossible," he gasps, blood streaming from where my teeth have torn his wrist. "I cut the phone lines. I disabled the relay tower." "You disabled the landline relay," comes a new voice from the hallway, a voice I don't recognize, but that carries unmistakable authority. "You forgot about the cellular backup system, and you definitely forgot that Dr. O'Brien here used to be Army Signal Corps before she became a veterinarian. She knows a thing or two about emergency communications." As the room fills with law enforcement officers, their weapons trained on Thompson and his accomplices, I finally release his wrist and back away, positioning myself protectively beside Sam's bed. Thompson clutches his bleeding hand, staring at me with a mixture of hatred and something that might be respect. "You always were too smart for your own good," he snarls. "Michael said you were special, but I never believed him. Guess I should have." "Yeah," Sam says from the bed, his voice growing stronger by the minute. "You should have." The handcuffs click around Thompson's wrists with a sound like Judgment Day, but instead of relief, I feel something darker settling into my bones. As the sheriff's deputies lead him toward the door, Thompson turns back one last time, his eyes finding mine across the chaos of the bedroom. "You think this is over," he says, his voice carrying a poison that cuts deeper than any physical wound. "You think catching me changes anything? There are things about that night in Afghanistan that would break your precious Sam's heart. Mutt. Things about his golden boy Michael that would make him wish his son had never been born." The words hit me like shrapnel, tearing through 3 years of carefully buried memories. Suddenly I'm not in Sam's bedroom anymore. I'm back in those mountains, back in the hell where everything went wrong, where the boy I loved more than life itself made the choice that destroyed us both. Thunder. Sam's voice sounds far away, concerned. "What's wrong, boy?" But I can't answer because I'm lost in the flashback, trapped in a memory so vivid I can taste the Afghan dust and smell the cordite in the air. It was a Tuesday morning, just after dawn patrol, when Lieutenant Michael Harrison called me into the command tent. His face was pale, his hands shaking as he spread out a map on the fold-out table. "We've got a problem." "Thunder," he'd said, his voice tight with something I'd never heard before, fear. Not the healthy fear that keeps soldiers alive, but the deep, soul-crushing terror of a man who's discovered he's been betrayed by everything he believed in. The intelligence photos scattered across the table showed Thompson's training facility, a converted shipping container hidden in the mountains, miles from any official base. But these weren't training photos. They were documentation of horror. Dogs strapped to tables, electrodes attached to their heads, their eyes vacant and lifeless. Medical charts showing behavioral modification experiments that would have made Nazi doctors proud. "Thompson's been using us as test subjects," Michael had whispered, his finger tracing the outline of the facility on the map. "All of us. The enhanced training protocols, the stress conditioning, the selective breeding programs. It's all been one big experiment to see how far they can push us before we break. I'd whined softly, pressing against his leg, trying to offer comfort. But Michael wasn't looking for comfort. He was looking for justice. There are 17 dogs in that facility right now, he'd continued, his voice growing harder. 17 of our brothers and sisters who went through Thompson's program and came out the other side as broken shells. He's planning to eliminate them all before the inspection team arrives next week. That's when Michael made the decision that would cost him his life. He was going to blow the whistle on Thompson's operation, no matter the consequences. But first, he was going to rescue those dogs. I need you to make a choice. Thunder, he'd said, kneeling down to look me in the eyes. I can't order you to come with me on this one. It's not official. It's not sanctioned. And if we get caught, they'll probably put us both down. But those dogs in that facility, they're depending on us. We're the only ones who know the truth. I'd pressed my head against his chest, and he'd understood. Of course I was going with him. That's what partners do. The raid itself had gone perfectly. We'd infiltrated the facility at 0200 hours, neutralized the guards without killing anyone, and freed all 17 dogs from their nightmare cages. Michael had documented everything with his camera, the medical equipment, the experiment logs, the evidence that would bring down Thompson's entire operation, but Thompson had been waiting for us at the extraction point. Did you really think I wouldn't figure it out? He'd said, stepping out of the shadows with a squad of private contractors behind him. Did you think I wouldn't have contingencies in place for bleeding heart idealists like you? Michael had pushed me behind a supply crate and drawn his sidearm. It's over, Thompson. I've got enough evidence to put you away for life. The photographs, the medical records, the testimony of every handler who's been asking questions, it's all being transmitted to division headquarters as we speak. Thompson's laugh had been like nails on a chalkboard. You naive little boy. Division headquarters. Division headquarters authorized this program. Where do you think the funding came from? Where do you think the orders originated? The betrayal had hit Michael like a physical blow. Everything he'd believed in, everything he'd fought for, had been built on a foundation of lies and corruption that went all the way to the top. But here's the beautiful part, Thompson had continued, clearly enjoying Michael's anguish. Your little rescue mission is going to be reclassified as a terrorist attack on a legitimate military facility. You'll be posthumously court-martialed for treason, and your precious dog there will be destroyed as a dangerous, uncontrollable animal. That's when the shooting started. Michael had fought like a lion, using every tactical skill the Corps had taught him to protect both me and the freed dogs. But there were too many of them, and they had heavier weapons. One by one, the dogs Michael had risked everything to save were cut down by automatic weapons fire. In the end, it came down to a choice. Thompson's men had Michael pinned down, wounded and running out of ammunition. They had me cornered on the other side of the compound. Michael could have escaped. There was a clear path to the extraction vehicle, a way out that would have saved his life. Instead, he chose to save mine. Thunder, run! He'd screamed, providing covering fire as I sprinted toward him. Get out of here. Tell them what really happened. But I couldn't leave him. I wouldn't leave him, so instead of running to safety, I ran toward the gunfire, toward Michael, toward certain death, because that's what partners do, they die together. Michael had wrapped his arms around me as the bullets found their mark. his blood soaking into my fur as he whispered his final words. "I'm sorry, boy. I'm so sorry. I couldn't save them all." Thompson's voice in Sam's bedroom brings me crashing back to the present. "Ask your dog about that night, Sam," he says as the deputies drag him toward the door. "Ask him who really pulled the trigger that killed your precious son. Ask him why Michael Harrison died holding a gun to his own head rather than face what he'd done." The lie is so monstrous, so perfectly crafted, that for a moment I can't breathe. Thompson is trying to plant a seed of doubt that will poison Sam's memories of his son forever, trying to make him believe that Michael committed suicide rather than face some imaginary shame. But Sam surprises me. Instead of shock or horror, his face shows only disgust. "Wade Thompson," he says with quiet dignity. "In 50 years of friendship, that's the most pathetic lie you've ever told. My boy died a hero's death fighting to save innocent animals from a monster, and if you think some last-minute fairy tale is going to change that, then you're even sicker than I thought." Thompson's face contorts with rage. "You weren't there. Old man, you don't know what really happened in those mountains." "No," Sam replies calmly. "But Thunder was. And I trust him a hell of a lot more than I trust you." As they finally drag Thompson from the room, I see something in his eyes that chills me to the bone. Not defeat, but calculation. Even now, even caught red-handed with a syringe full of poison, he's still planning, still scheming, still trying to find a way to win. The nightmare isn't over. It's just beginning. Outside the bedroom window, I can see the red and blue lights of the police cars painting the oak trees in shifting colors. And I realize that exposing Thompson was just the first battle in a war that's been raging for 3 years. Now comes the hard part, proving that everything he told the world about Michael's death was a lie, and making sure that the 17 dogs who died in that mountain facility finally get the justice they deserve. But first, I need to make sure Sam survives the night, because Thompson may be in custody, but the poison is still working its way through Sam's system, and time is running out. The real paramedics arrive 20 minutes later, and they move through Sam's bedroom with practiced efficiency that tells me these aren't Thompson's hired imposters. Dr. Maggie directs them with the authority of someone who's seen more medical emergencies than she cares to remember. Her graying hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail, her weathered hands steady as she helps check Sam's vital signs. "Pulse is weak but steady," one of the paramedics reports, wrapping a blood pressure cuff around Sam's arm. "Blood pressure's low, breathing shallow. What kind of poison are we looking at here?" "Doctor," Maggie holds up a piece of broken glass from the shattered syringe, careful not to touch the residue. "Won't know for sure until we get it to the lab. But based on the symptoms and the clear liquid, I'm guessing it's something designed to mimic a heart attack. Probably Digitalis-based, maybe mixed with a paralytic agent." And as they work, preparing Sam for transport to the hospital, I catch fragments of conversation from the sheriff's deputies scattered throughout the house. They've found Thompson's medical bag, filled with enough pharmaceutical-grade poisons to kill a small army. They've discovered the fake emergency services van parked behind the barn, complete with bogus equipment and forged credentials. Most importantly, they've found the loose floorboard behind the refrigerator and Michael's hidden letters. "Detective Rodriguez is going to want to see this," one deputy says, carefully bagging the ammunition box full of correspondence. "This could be the break we've been looking for in the Harrison case." Detective Rodriguez. Sam had mentioned hiring a private investigator, but I'd thought it was just an old man's paranoia. Apparently, Sam had been building a case against Thompson for months, collecting evidence, connecting dots that the official military investigation had deliberately ignored. As the paramedics wheel Sam toward the front door on a gurney, he reaches out and grabs my collar with surprising strength. "Thunder," he whispers, his voice barely audible over the chaos of radios and footsteps. "The letters. Make sure they read all of them, especially the last one. There's something about the other dogs." His grip loosens as the sedative they've given him takes effect, and I watch helplessly as they load him into the ambulance. Dr. Maggie appears at my side, her hand resting gently on my head. "He's going to be okay," she says, though I can hear the uncertainty in her voice. "Thompson may be a monster, but he's a careful monster. He wouldn't have used anything that would show up obviously in an autopsy. Sam's tougher than he looks. He'll pull through this. But it's not just Sam's physical recovery I'm worried about. It's what comes next, the investigation, the trial, the inevitable media circus when the truth about Thompson's operation comes to light. And somewhere in the back of my mind, Thompson's parting words keep echoing, 'There are things about that night in Afghanistan that would break your precious Sam's heart.'" Dr. Maggie seems to read my thoughts. "You're worried about more than just the poison, aren't you?" she says, kneeling down to look me in the eyes. "There's something else, something about what Thompson said before they took him away. I can't explain it to her in words, but somehow she understands. Maybe it's the way my ears flatten against my skull when she mentions Afghanistan, or the way I keep looking toward the kitchen where Michael's letters are hidden. Whatever it is, she gets it. "Come on," she says, standing up and heading toward the kitchen. "Let's see what secrets Michael was trying to tell his father." The deputies have already removed most of the letters for evidence. But Dr. Maggie has connections in law enforcement. Her late husband was a sheriff's detective for 30 years. Within an hour, Detective Rodriguez arrives with photocopies of everything they found in the hidden cache. Rodriguez is a thin, serious man in his 50s with gray-streaked hair and eyes that miss nothing. He spreads the letters across Sam's kitchen table like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, studying them with the intensity of someone who's spent years chasing ghosts. "Your friend Sam wasn't just grieving," he tells Dr. Maggie as I lie beneath the table, listening to every word. "He was conducting his own investigation. These letters paint a picture of systematic abuse and cover-up that goes way beyond one rogue officer." He picks up what looks like Michael's final letter, the one I remember being different from the others, shorter, more urgent, written in a hand that shook with either fear or rage. "This last one is particularly interesting," Rodriguez continues. "Lieutenant Harrison wasn't just documenting Thompson's abuse of military working dogs. He'd discovered something else, a connection between Thompson's experimental program and a series of training accidents that killed or disabled dozens of animals over a 3-year period." Dr. Maggie leans forward, her veterinarian's instincts engaged. "What kind of accidents?" "The kind that only happen when someone wants them to." Rodriguez replies grimly, "Dogs that attacked their handlers during routine exercises and had to be destroyed. Dogs that developed sudden, aggressive behavioral problems and were euthanized for public safety. Dogs that simply disappeared from the program with no official explanation." He sets down another document, not a letter, but what looks like a medical chart. Lieutenant Harrison had somehow gotten hold of Thompson's private records. Turns out Thompson wasn't just running unauthorized experiments. He was eliminating evidence. Every dog that showed signs of trauma from his program, every animal that might potentially testify to abuse if the right investigator came asking questions, they all met convenient, untraceable ends. The pieces are falling into place now, forming a picture so horrific it makes my blood run cold. Thompson wasn't just a sadistic officer who enjoyed hurting animals. He was running a systematic elimination program, using the cover of military authority to hide torture and murder on an industrial scale. "How many?" Dr. Maggie asks, her voice barely a whisper. Rodriguez shuffles through the papers, his expression growing darker with each page. According to Lieutenant Harrison's research, 43 military working dogs died under suspicious circumstances between 2018 and 2021. All of them had been through Thompson's enhanced training program. All of them had exhibited signs of psychological trauma that could have led to awkward questions if the right people had started investigating. 43 of my brothers and sisters, murdered to protect a secret that was already rotting from within. The weight of it settles on my chest like a stone, and for a moment I can barely breathe. But then Rodriguez says something that changes everything. "There's one more thing," he continues, pulling out a final document. "This last letter mentions a survivor, a dog that went through Thompson's program, witnessed the abuse, and somehow escaped before Thompson could have him eliminated. A German Shepherd named Thunder, assigned to Lieutenant Michael Harrison's unit." He looks down at me, and I see recognition in his eyes. "That's you, isn't it? You're the witness Thompson's been trying to silence all these years. You're the one who knows the truth about what really happened in those mountains." Dr. Maggie's hand finds my head again, and I can feel her trembling. "Thunder," she whispers. "What did you see over there? What did Thompson do that was so terrible he'd spend 3 years hunting you down to keep it secret?" I close my eyes and let the memories come flooding back, not just of Michael's death, but of everything that led up to it. The torture chamber disguised as a training facility, the dogs who went in healthy and came out broken, if they came out at all, the systematic destruction of evidence and witnesses that Thompson had orchestrated with military precision, and, most importantly, the choice Michael made in those final moments not to save himself, but to save the truth. Tomorrow, when Sam is strong enough to hear it, I'll find a way to tell him the story his son died trying to expose. Tonight, I'll stand guard over these letters and documents, protecting them the way I couldn't protect Michael, because 43 dogs died to keep Thompson's secret. It's time the world knew why. 3 months later, I'm sitting beside Sam on the front porch of our ranch, watching the autumn sun paint the Texas sky in shades of gold and crimson. The rocking chair creaks gently as he moves back and forth, and there's color in his cheeks again, life in his eyes that I thought Thompson's poison had stolen forever. "Well, I'll be damned," Sam says, folding up the newspaper and setting it on the side table. "They're calling it the biggest military scandal since My Lai. Thompson's facing 43 counts of animal cruelty, conspiracy, murder, and about a dozen other charges I can't even pronounce. The trial had been a media circus, exactly as I'd feared. But justice has a way of cutting through all the noise and politics. Detective Rodriguez and his team had done their work with surgical precision, building a case so airtight that even Thompson's high-powered lawyers couldn't find cracks in it. Michael's letters had been the foundation, but they'd found so much more financial records showing Thompson's Swiss bank accounts, testimony from handlers who'd been too scared to speak up before, even video evidence from security cameras that Thompson thought he'd destroyed. Maggie pulls into the driveway in her old Ford pickup, and I can see a cake carrier in the passenger seat. She's been coming around a lot lately, ostensibly to check on Sam's recovery, but I've noticed the way they look at each other when they think I'm not watching, the way she laughs at his terrible jokes, the way he makes sure to shave and put on a clean shirt before her visits. "Afternoon, Margaret," Sam calls out as she climbs the porch steps. "Hope you didn't go to any trouble on my account." "Sam Harrison, you old fool," she replies with mock severity, but her eyes are sparkling. "It's Thunder's birthday, not yours. The cake is for him." She's right. It's been exactly 1 year since the day Sam stood up in that auction house and changed both our lives forever. A year since I learned what it meant to have a real home, a real family, people who love you not because of what you can do for them, but simply because of who you are. The cake is chocolate, my favorite, though I pretend not to have favorites, and as Maggie lights a single candle on top. Sam starts telling the story he's told a dozen times now, but never gets tired of repeating. "You know," he says, scratching behind my ears in that spot that makes my tail thump against the porch boards. "When I first saw this ornery mutt in that auction house, I thought I was rescuing him. Turns out he was rescuing me. It's become our ritual, this gentle teasing about who saved whom. The truth is, we saved each other. Sam gave me back my faith in humans, and I gave him a reason to keep fighting when everything seemed hopeless." The Michael Harrison Memorial Center for Retired Military Working Dogs officially opens next month, built on 10 acres adjacent to our ranch. Maggie will run the veterinary clinic. Sam will handle the administrative side, and I'll serve as what they're calling the ambassador dog, helping newly retired animals adjust to civilian life, using my own experience to guide them through the healing process. "Sometimes the best things in life come when you least expect them," Sam says, echoing the words he spoke that first night when I chose to trust him enough to sleep on his porch instead of hiding in the shadows. As the sun sets behind the oak trees, painting everything in soft golden light, I rest my head on Sam's lap and listen to him and Dr. Maggie plan their future, our future, a future built on love, hope, and the unshakable belief that broken things can heal if given enough time and patience. Tomorrow, we'll start preparing for the Memorial Center's opening. Tonight, we're just a family enjoying the simple pleasure of being together, grateful for second chances and the endless capacity of the heart to love again. Home isn't a place. I've learned it's the people who choose to love you unconditionally, scars and all. And for the first time in my life, I'm truly home. 1 year later, as I watch Sam teach a young German shepherd named Ranger how to trust again, I'm reminded that healing isn't a destination, it's a journey we take together. The Michael Harrison Memorial Center has become more than we ever dreamed. It's a sanctuary where broken soldiers, both human and canine, learn that their scars don't define their worth. This morning, a Vietnam veteran named Frank brought his newly adopted military dog, a Belgian Malinois who'd been written off as too damaged for civilian life. I watched Sam kneel beside that trembling animal with the same patience he'd shown me, offering understanding without judgment, hope without false promises. "Every dog deserves a second chance," Sam told Frank, his weathered hands gentle as he helped the Malinois approach the water bowl. "Just like every soldier deserves to come home." Dr. Maggie, who became Mrs. Harrison 3 months ago in a simple ceremony under our oak tree, runs the medical side of the operation with the efficiency of someone who's found her true calling. She's helped 47 retired military dogs transition to civilian life, each one carrying their own story of survival and redemption. I've learned that being a hero isn't about the battles you fight. It's about the healing you help others find. When I see a frightened dog take their first tentative steps toward trust, or watch a veteran's face light up as they bond with their new partner, I understand what Michael died trying to protect. It wasn't just about exposing Thompson's crimes. It was about preserving the sacred bond between soldier and dog, the loyalty that transcends species and survives even the worst betrayals. Sometimes I catch Sam looking at Michael's photograph on the mantel, and I know he's thinking about roads not taken, words left unspoken. But then Ranger or one of the other dogs will need attention, and Sam's focus returns to the present, to the lives we can still touch and heal. The center received a letter last week from the families of the 43 dogs Thompson murdered. They're planning a memorial wall with each dog's name and photograph, a permanent reminder that their sacrifice wasn't in vain. Justice may have been delayed, but it wasn't denied. As evening falls and the last visitors head home, Sam and I walk the perimeter of the property together, checking on the dogs in their comfortable kennels, making sure everyone is safe and secure. This is our ritual now, our way of saying goodnight to a family that grows larger every month. In the distance, I can hear Dr. Maggie calling us in for dinner, her voice carrying the warmth of someone who's finally found where she belongs. Sam chuckles and picks up his pace, and I match his stride, content in the knowledge that some stories, the ones worth telling, never really end. They just keep getting better. To our listeners, at 55, 60, or even 68, you might think your most meaningful chapters have already been written. But Thunder and Sam's story proves that life's most profound connections, the ones that heal our deepest wounds and give us renewed purpose, often come when we least expect them. Sometimes the very experiences that broke us become the foundation for helping others heal. Your wisdom, your scars, your capacity for unconditional love. These aren't signs of a life winding down, but gifts waiting to transform someone else's tomorrow. What moment in your life taught you that second chances can come at any age? Have you ever discovered that your greatest pain became your greatest strength in helping others? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what another soul needs to hear today.